I'm going to share my presentation. Can you?
Yes, it's there.
Can you see? Can everybody see? Okay, great. So I'm going to talk very briefly about my work in the context of abortion rights in Israel. But let's start first with the broader context. As Professor Lemke has already mentioned, me and my colleague Shulamit Almog, we are the founding co-director of the Forum for Gender Law and Policy that was established less than a decade ago with the goal of bridging the gap between theory and practice. And as part of our work in the Forum, we're trying to advocate for gender equality legal reform, to inform public policy, to develop and disseminate knowledge in the field of advance gender-related research and teaching, and of course to promote public debate on issues of gender inequality. And one of our central projects is promoting abortion rights in Israel. And if you ask me why focus on abortion rights, I would say that first, access to abortion on demand is a key issue in the struggle for gender equality. And I truly believe that the equal citizenship of women depends on their ability to have full control over their bodies and to make autonomous reproductive decisions. So what is wrong with Israel's abortion law and how are we trying to change it? So Israel's abortion law is part of the Penal Code. It was enacted in 1977. It imposes a criminal prohibition on the performance of abortions while providing a few exceptions, which, when applicable, would allow a three-person committee to approve abortion. There are four legal grounds for abortion. The first ground for abortion is age-related. The second ground for abortion relates to personal circumstances. The third ground for abortion relates to fetal abnormalities. And the fourth ground for abortion relates to women's health. It determines that the committee can grant permission to abortion when the continuation of the pregnancy is likely to endanger the woman's life or cause her physical or mental harm. There used to be a fifth ground for abortion known as the socioeconomic ground for abortion, but it was repealed in 1980, shortly after the law was enacted. So if we try to summarize what are the central characteristics of Israel's abortion law, we can conclude that there is no recognized right to abortion on demand. Access to abortion depends on a committee's approval. Women don't have the right to choose. The legal grounds for abortion are narrow and don't include socioeconomic grounds. And why is it important? Because in most instances, women who seek to end an unwanted pregnancy want to do it because of socioeconomic reasons. So how do you promote change under these circumstances? This is a question I've been struggling with for quite a long time. And of course, the immediate answer is legal reform, right? Change the law. So I drafted a proposal for legislative reform in 2014. The goal was to draft a law that would recognize a woman's right to choose to end an unwanted pregnancy. The first section of the law, the proposed law, determines that its purpose is to regulate pregnancy termination in Israel in a way that promotes gender equality and ensures a woman's right to her body, her right to health care, and to liberty and human dignity. This proposed bill was submitted to the Israeli parliament several times. Unfortunately, we were not able to push it forward. And currently, under current political circumstances, there is no chance that parliament will pass this law. So what do you do when the primary route for change, legal reform, is not available? You try to think of alternative routes. And I was focusing on promoting procedural and administrative changes that can expand abortion access. Slightly more than a year ago, I got in touch with top officials at the Ministry of Health, and I assisted them in drafting new guidelines for abortion access. These guidelines have been published last November. And the most dramatic change in this context is that I was able to convince the people at the Ministry of Health to embrace a broader definition of what constitutes potential risk to mental harm. If you remember earlier, I said that the fourth legal ground for abortion determines that if the continuation of the pregnancy is likely to cause the woman mental harm, she can get permission to abortion. So my argument was that when we talk about mental health, we are not talking about mental disorder, but rather we're talking more broadly about the well-being of the woman. And therefore today, and this is something that the Ministry of Health accepted, every form of psychological distress that endangers the well-being of a woman can now justify committee approval of legal abortion under the new guidelines. And this is, of course, a major victory for Israeli women that could be achieved without changing the law itself. So in conclusion, I think that Israel's story of abortion rights is part of a global story of women's struggle for abortion rights. And this story is still unfolding in many places in the world. And in my opinion, a just and a gender equal society is defined by its abortion law. And under this standard, Israel cannot be defined as a gender equal society, and many other countries fall into this categories. So we should all try to promote change in this area. And of course, change does not simply happen. It is made by people who care. So I urge you all to join us on board and to join the struggle for promoting abortion rights for all women everywhere. So thank you very much. And my colleague, Professor Shulamit Almog, will now talk about promoting gender equality in the academia.
Thank you, Noya. And thank you both for inviting us to this event. As Stephanie mentioned, I'm the advisor of the President for Gender Equity and also head of the Diversity and Equality Unit at the university. So my short talk will touch upon these issues, upon which we cooperate, the unit and the forum. For instance, we had an international workshop just a few weeks ago with participants from all over the world discussing the specific issue of gender equity in academia. But first, let me talk about the general context. The late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg famously recalled being turned away from a library at Howard because it didn't allow women inside. In 2023, such stories seem unbelievable. They seem to reflect a lack of gender equality in the past that seems very, very distant. But that is not to say that we live in a reality of gender equality in the present. Unfortunately, we are far from it. The origins of the attitude that support inequality still linger in higher education today. In Israel, according to the Council for Higher Education, Women are the majority of enrolled students in every degree, from bachelor's to PhD. There are 53% of PhD students. But for women who choose to remain in academia, their opportunities for advancement and promotion are still not at par with those of men. And gender equity among higher education faculty is unfortunately still elusive. There are myriad reasons why this issue persists today. I will not have time, of course, to review all of them, but I will mention that some of the reasons are hardly intentional. The academic ethos could be blind to its own gender bias when it comes to recruitment and promotions, or to the prevalence of excluding practices like sexual harassment or work hours that are incompatible with achieving a work-family balance. But currently, there are two competing theories as to why the genders are still unequal in the workplace in general and in academy particularly. The first is the famous glass ceiling theory, which states that there are certain invisible barriers in place that prevent true equity from taking place. The second is the pipeline theory, which tells us that eventually everything will be okay. This theory stipulates that gender equity will be achieved, but over time, and there's no need for outside intervention. However, what we can learn from data all over the world, the pipeline is not a good answer, because even if in theory, eventually equality will be reached, the process is extremely slow. In the European Union, where gender equity programs have been in place for several years, the pipeline approach has not achieved the hoped-for goals. For instance, in a document distributed a few years ago by the EU to member countries and partners, including Israel, the EU clarified that academia remains characterized by fundamental inequality despite efforts by the EU and its state to achieve gender equality. Every year, the number of few female faculty is less than 1/2 of the number of female doctoral graduates, with few women hired into position entailing leadership and decision-making. Accordingly, the EU intensifies efforts and enriches the tools for achieving equality. The same happens in Israel, where a new program has started 2 years ago. In a moment, I'll talk more about it. But I'll just say that at the University of Haifa, we tackled this issue head-on by establishing a gender equity unit and drafting a strategic plan that we submitted to the Council for Higher Education. This plan expands upon what is called by the Higher Education Council the Equator Index program, which measures and assesses data in ways in which higher education institutes are addressing gender inequity among the ranks for the next 5 academic years. Well, in our university, the data is not bad. Actually, the University of Haifa remains very close to meeting the requirements presented by the Council Planning and the Budgeting Committee, both in terms of gender parity at large and in terms of the percentage of women in senior academic ranks. Yet, we are seeing a dismaying trend that the higher the rank of a faculty member, the more likely that that person will be a man. The higher the ranks, the fewer are the women. So as such, we have launched a project which we named the METIS project, which is aimed toward mentoring women researchers at the university And we emphasize it. We emphasize the efforts that must be dedicated to early career researchers, and this is what the project is focused on. This program provides much needed leadership workshop, cognitive training, and it advocates, for example, for gender-neutral language on campus in order to help level the playing field. In the next year, we hope to achieve gender parity in senior management position across the board and make our university culture even more inclusive. I believe that the University of Haifa has the building blocks to establish a paradigm of achieving gender equality. And while being proud of our achievement, we work hard to build a better future for our daughters and granddaughters to live in. There are many, many challenges that we are struggling with, theoretical and practical. To sum up, I'll mention just one of the current challenges that our team is working on and thinking about. We are now writing a theoretical and practical position paper on this, and this is the meeting of gender equity with aims of diversity and intersectionality, which is not, which is theoretically, it's not an easy task, and we're trying to decipher how to get the optimal results. So this is just an example to many challenges we have in the university, but I think that the main thing is awareness to the challenges, to the goals, and commitment to advance them. Thank you.
Thank you.